there, everyone. It's Emily. Welcome back to the History of Diving Museum. I was just practicing my breath holding for when I eventually can get back out on the reef, which hopefully will be soon. But today we're going to talk a little bit about freediving and how breath holding kind of ties into it and is an important part of it. Now, you may not know this, but the average human can only hold their breath for about 1 minute. And as you can see from my timer here, that is about all I can do, so I'm quite average in the breath holding department. But some of the record-setting breath holders have held their breaths for 6 to 8 minutes, which is quite impressive if you ask me. Now, for as long as humans have been around, probably we've been using and utilizing breath holding in some shape or form. Most of that was originally for hunting and foraging and basically finding ourselves food so we didn't die off. But as time went on, we utilized it for salvaging, and nowadays a lot of times it is used for competitions as well. Now, the earliest written recording of someone utilizing freediving is from over 4,000 years ago, and that was the King Gilgamesh from Mesopotamia. And the story goes that he had heard about a plant at the bottom of a river that supposedly granted the eater of it immortality. So he decided to tie rocks to his feet. He submerged himself into the river, sunk to the bottom, and he collected the plant and came back to the surface. But he was so exhausted being a king that he needed to take a nap once he got back on land. And while he was sleeping, a snake came up, ate the plant, and sadly Gilgamesh is not around today, so he did not get immortality. But the fun fact with that is snakes are always shedding their skin, so in a way they have their own weird form of immortality. Now, as history continues on, you have other stories of ancient Greeks that utilized freediving and breath holding for treasure salvage on ships that were sunk at battle or in harbors. You even have the famous philosopher Aristotle, who actually created the first diving bell. And if you remember, a couple weeks ago I talked about Halley's diving bell in the 1600s, but Aristotle created his in 360 BC, so that's quite a while back. What's neat about freediving is the fact that it's not just in one part of the world. It's been utilized all across the globe in different cultures, and one of the more famous cultures that has utilized freediving is the Japanese ama divers. And they are mostly made up of females, and they will go down, dive to the bottom of the ocean, and initially they were just collecting shellfish and seaweed, and sometimes coming across, oysters that would have pearls. Over time, that actually became, a sustainable practice, and it was a big kind of market for it. People wanted the pearls that were harvested by the ama divers. And as technologies changed over the years, the ama chose to adopt some of the technologies, but let other ones go. They do utilize goggles so they can actually see what they're doing underwater, but as a culture, they chose not to adopt scuba equipment and hoses and things because they had the foresight that that would actually allow them to take more than they needed, which would eventually deplete the ecosystem of the resources that they relied on. So to this day, they do not utilize any scuba equipment or modern technologies. They purely rely on their breath holding techniques and some goggles to carry out these traditions. They even have women that are in their 70s that still participate in this. Pretty cool stuff from a cultural component. Now, I also mentioned that freediving has become a competitive sport. In the late 1940s in Italy, some of the people there decided to actually start using it as a competitive thing and would go down 45, 50 meters. It was quite impressive at the time. Nobody had really been doing this to see how far you could push your body. During the 1960s, freediving competitively really was beginning to take off. And there were 3 gentlemen who were the main competitors and record holders at the time. They were Bob Croft, Jacques Mayall, and Enzo Maiorca. And on any given day, the records could be switching between the three of them. And for the most part, they utilized weighted sleds to achieve these records. The way a weighted sled works is it is going down a rope as the diver is being submerged, pulling the diver to whatever depth or the ability that diver is able to go. When the diver is ready to stop, they have a handbrake that they could pull on that would stop the sled, and then the diver would essentially kind of pull themselves up and use the rope as a guideline back to the surface. And these records included the amount of time that the diver was underwater and the depth that they stopped at, which is pretty neat. And the farthest any of them actually got was over 100 meters deep, so more than 300 feet down, which is really impressive. And Jacques Mayol made that record in the late 1980s. Now, over time, freediving competitions changed, the rules adapted, different techniques could be used. Sometimes in some competitions, you had divers that would use a sled going down and use like an airlift bag to go back to the surface. So that actually allowed them to go deeper and come up quicker. You also have some that didn't use weighted sleds and that they just relied on whatever weight was on their body in the addition of weight belts, and using fins they may kick down to the bottom and then return. And over time, with all the different rules, you had different competitions, different fractions kind of pop up with that. But here at the museum, we focus on those three original record holders. And we actually have Bob Croft's original sled and one of Jacques Mayol's as well, which is really impressive. With some of the more modern freediving competitions, we actually have a wetsuit and some of the gear that Ted Harty used, and he had the record for freediving for distance for quite some time, which is really impressive. And he went on to create Immersion Freediving, which is an organization that trains people to safely freedive so you aren't risking having these shallow water blackouts, because like any form of diving, you have to do so safely. If you're underwater, you're relying on what your body can do or the equipment that you're hooked up to. So safety is always important, especially today. So I hope you enjoyed a little bit about freediving history. It's obviously important because without freediving and holding our breath, we wouldn't be using the equipment we have today, so we could extend our periods of time underwater even more. Who knows what we'll continue to dream up in the next few years and decades to come. I hope you enjoyed the video. Feel free to leave comments and ask questions. I always like hearing from you guys. Stay safe out there. Don't have shallow water blackouts, and wash your hands. We'll see you guys next time.